To learn together, for we can search for what is true. 5, all people need a voice. 6, build a fair and peaceful world. 7, we care for the earth. We light a chalice.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Remember that? I grew up with that every Saturday morning during cartoons, and it changed my life. It changed the way that I behave. In February of this year, Keep America Beautiful announced the transfer of ownership of this well-known anti-pollution public service announcement that first aired on April 22nd, 1971. The second Earth Day. The property was transferred to the National Congress of American Indian Fund. This news made me recall that as a child, I saw this advertisement for ecology. While the PSA was synonymous with furthering environmental protection and awareness in popular culture, today, it is known for featuring imagery that stereotyped American Indian and Alaska Native people and misappropriated Native culture. Now it's time for all ages. All the young at heart, short and tall of stature. Oh, I skipped it. Forgive me. I was planning a very secular service this morning, and I think I excluded the hymns that Renee so kindly picked out for us. I think now it's time for all ages. Today we are honoring Earth Day, and we are exploring how we resist being complacent by changing our habits. Now it's time for the offertory, I believe. Here at UUFM, the offering we receive on Sunday morning goes to a social support organization each month. Our April Helping Hands recipient is the Fairy Godmothers Fund. I was lucky to be at Shepherd's Crossing and volunteer with Betty Banner, and we helped women apply for grants from the Fairy Godmothers Fund. The grants were for women who live paycheck to paycheck, gig to gig. And they face, just as we do, unaffordable major expenses like car registration, basic health and household supplies, dental work, car repairs. You can donate online by going to uufm.net, and if you're here in person, you can put your offering in the basket at the back. I'd also like to invite you to use this time to share your joys and sorrows. You can write on the paper that's under the seat in front of you, and I will come around and pick them up.
Thank you, Renee. A couple more. My name is Pastor Isabel Call, and it's my joy to serve as the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan. Thank you. And I'm grateful to everybody who is here this morning in person and on Zoom, bringing yourselves, your spirits, your joys and your sorrows. Thank you to Sarah for convening. So let us invite in our spirit of love and compassion, and open our ears, open our hearts, and as necessary, open our hands to action as we take in the joys, sorrows, celebrations, and concerns of this community. So we have a number of joys shared here in the sanctuary, and then I'll invite Kathy Swenson to share the joys coming in on Zoom. So John and Judy Extel are happy that their son Charles is visiting until May. How wonderful. Till the end of May. Great. Cool. Looking forward to meeting him and seeing him here. Yeah. Let's see, here's a joy. One of the greatest joys in her mom and dad's life is Jessica's birthday on Earth Day. Her mom went to the hospital, then went home, and then went back for her birthday to be 12:30 a.m. Happy birthday, Jessica. Amy Betts shares, there was amazing turnout to Little Apple Pride yesterday. Thank you to Joe, Judy, Tom, Sylvia, Pastor Izza, Larry, Sandy, and Kathy, and everyone else representing UUs in City Park. It was lovely. It was exciting. Yeah, thank you. A joy. Happy Kitchen was a joy 2 days ago. A bit exciting, but a joy. So there must be a story underneath there. Hopefully we can hear it later. And Susan shares, Friday marked Eid al-Fitr, the end of Ramadan. Let us celebrate with our Muslim friends during this holy time. And we can say to them, Eid Mubarak. So if you want to practice together, Eid Mubarak. Eid Mubarak. So blessings for Eid. And Kathy, share with us any joys that came in on Zoom.
Yes, I believe we just have one joy, and that was from Mark Mosier and Terry, and it is that Mark has a new grandson, a little girl, Safara. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. His son Nick and Tara and his wife Tara had a new baby girl. So that's pretty exciting. And no sorrow.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. And no sorrows that I saw. I'm going to check just again, just to make sure. That is all I see. Yeah, except, okay, good. And yes, and yesterday was a joy at the Pride Parade, and a joy to see everybody there, and excited. Lots of people from the fellowship were there. And it's a joy that we're going to have our meeting this afternoon. That's the joy I have. And if you haven't signed up, you can let me know if you need to sign up, because I will let that be known. So just email Dan and Kathy Swenson, or put it in the chat that you would like to sign up. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, a joy that we're all here in this community, and our community, our other communities throughout Manhattan and beyond. It was good to see other folks at Pride. I know Kathy Hedge was there with League of Women Voters. Like, we are rippling out throughout the community. So we do have a few sorrows to share. Marissa shared yesterday, we celebrated the life of the nicest human I've ever known, Jim Larson. He was 96, my dad's cousin and dear family friend. So we join you in sorrow and celebrating Jim. And Chris Bailey shares sorrow at the passing of my beloved uncle, David Bailey, founding member of the Mid-Coast UU Fellowship in Maine. Thankfully, Uncle David was able to pass gently and peacefully, surrounded by his children and spouse of nearly 65 years. Joining you in sorrow, Chris. And I'll acknowledge the sorrow felt by trans folks facing legalized discrimination through the passing of SB 180, the so-called Women's Bill of Rights, and acknowledging the fire fomenting in many of us underneath our effort to do phone banking tomorrow or write to our legislators to sustain the governor's veto of that bill. So let's take some breaths to acknowledge all these joys and sorrows, as well as those that remain quietly in our hearts.
As I mentioned before, we're going to be watching a documentary today, somewhat in honor of Earth Day and a lot about social justice and climate change. I'll read what we wrote in the program. We'll watch one of 3 documentaries in the Nation in Transition series, which comes to us from the Interfaith Power and Light organization. The documentary we'll watch explores the coal-to-renewables transition on the Navajo Nation and across northern Arizona through the stories of workers, their families and communities, business and tribal leaders, utility executives, policymakers, and environmental activists. The film offers a roadmap for accelerating and navigating just energy transitions for workers and communities everywhere. As we make our own transitions here at UUFM, we look to another community for guidance.
It takes a lot of water to produce our energy. It takes a lot of energy to move our water. There's a total lift of about 2,000 feet with a dozen or so separate pumping plants to do that lift. The canal is 300 some miles long as it comes into Phoenix and then heads south to Tucson. And it is the largest user of electricity in the state of Arizona. We need to pump water 24 hours a day, whether the sun is shining or not. And coal provided that reliability.
For half a century, coal has been one of the cheapest forms of electricity available. It's no longer so cheap. The shift to clean energy in electric vehicles is already happening, and is happening faster than anyone expected. Now our task is to manage that transition to ensure that it is both just and sustainable.
There's a lot of economic prosperity that's going to come along with this transformation, but there are going to be costs. Some whole categories of jobs are just going to disappear.
Take a new job far from home or face unemployment. That's the decision facing hundreds of employees of the Navajo Generating Station.
Last year, officials from the Navajo Nation and Salt River Project decided to shut down the plant.
It is emotional. A lot of people, when they lose their livelihood, it's like losing a loved one. That meal is not there no more. The payment for the mortgage or the payment for the vehicle, those are all gone.
Our daily routines and habits, all the way up to the way we organize geopolitics, the way we distribute wealth and power in the world, are wrapped up in this thing that we call the energy system. So when we change it, we're going to get changes in everything else at the same time. We need to start learning now, and we need to learn at a pace and a scale that we've never learned before.
Like 1940, there's only 400,000 people, population in the state of Arizona. Now we got 7 million people. For 50 years now, we gave low-cost energy and power for the state of Arizona so they could have what they have now. We didn't profit from it.
For decades, a large portion of the Navajo Nation's income has derived from coal royalties. Coal that was mined here and used to produce energy for Phoenix, Vegas, and California didn't yield a quality of life that the people in Phoenix, Vegas, and California enjoy.
The raw resources, Navajo resources, were purchased at low prices, rock bottom prices. Navajo water from the upper basin Colorado River was used to help with the operation of the Navajo Generating Station. We waived our rights to claim any of that water for the duration of the power plant, and we never got any payment for it.
There used to be a lot of water around here. We didn't have to travel a distance to get water. So I would say that we spent more money for our water than people that have running water. Because we had to buy gas, we had wear and tear on our vehicle to get water from the chapter house and haul them back for our drinking water or for our livestock. I'm glad that they're shutting it down. But we would like to see them to fix it the way it was before. And they just can't leave, leave it like that and leave.
I'm 50 years old and these guys are just now leaving. And I've spent the prime of my life battling the pollution here and not being able to herd sheep on my family ancestral land and not being able to farm here. And so I never got a chance to use any of this land.
The plant was built when I was in high school. My dad was hired by SRP to work at the plant. So it was important to our family that he was employed there, and it was a good thing for us. I started at SRP in 1979 as an operator trainee. Once the plant was built and people were employed there, I think we thought it was just going to be there forever. There was no thought that it was ever going to close down. People had raised their families there. It just seemed like part of the community. So the news of shutting it down really was a shock, I think, to everyone. It was just unexpected. I had always thought I was going to retire there, but word came down that we weren't going to be economically viable anymore.
As much as the Navajo Nation has depended on the coal and this operation, it has never really brought prosperity to the nation, and it has never really taken the nation out of the high unemployment rate that persists even today.
I'm a union iron worker for local ironworkers 433 in LA. So it's a ways from here to find work, but that's the only place I can find work. Nothing around here for us. We got the mine and the plant, there's only 600 workers, but there's 300,000 of us. And then where do they find work? There's no work at home. So you got mom and dads having to travel that far away to find work, and you got your kids at home with grandma, grandpas, and having the whole nation 50% unemployed, and then you got 60% of people in poverty.
What we're confronted with now is declining government resources and a larger population to sustain. The great opportunity here is to invest in solar or wind for communities that have bore the brunt and the adverse impacts of extraction, but never received the appropriate compensation for giving up land, water, cultural or religious resources that may be contaminated forever. It's critical that we chart a new path defined by our traditional values, being able to have a family, your animals, and multi-generations living in the community you've always lived in. And at the same time, participate in the modern world and in the community of nations.
I think we have a design challenge. The way that we design the ownership of that energy, the geography of that energy, the way that we design the markets, it is the opportunity of a century to build a low carbon future that does more for us than just replace the energy system that we have with a new one. And that's one of the things we can start learning with what's happening here in Arizona around the Navajo Nation, because we've never tried to do anything like this on this scale, this complexity, this deeply integrated into our human systems.
We have a long and not so great relationship with the federal government, not to mention all the other entities that have come on and off the Navajo Nation. We're still a sovereign nation. And when we say sovereign, that means we can determine our own destiny. It's not only a trust issue between the Navajo people and outside entities. It's a trust issue between we as well as the Navajo government and our Navajo communities. We're a big government. We have about 300,000 members, and that means we have to build consensus among our own Navajo people and our own communities. If you don't have a total buy-in of the whole community, the discontent with one stakeholder who's not happy with the process, their discontent kind of grows and it starts reaching into other parts of the community, and pretty soon you don't have that buy-in. There's no trust of the process anymore, and people feel left out.
We collectively need to win. I don't give a damn which party wins. I want answers. When a conflict arises, the ability to pick up the phone and call the city manager and say, this is what my attorneys are telling me, and that we need to go to court with you. What are your attorneys telling you? And can we kick the attorneys out of the room and solve this problem? That's essential.
Arizona Public Service Company has been the largest provider of electricity in the state of Arizona for more than 100 years. We operate 2 coal-fired power plants, one in northeastern Arizona, and that's the Cholla Power Plant. And that plant is slated to close in 2025. And we announced that closure in 2015. It is really important to start planning before there are plans to formally close the plant and start talking about what will happen when the plant closes. It is never too early to begin these conversations. So you would have regulators and legislators at the table, you would have your Public Utility Commission representatives at the table, environmental groups, faith groups, labor organizations, and then obviously the electric utility. And a lot of these folks bring different perspectives, and that's one of the challenges in this space, is figuring out how to reconcile those perspectives.
You can't over-communicate. We're beginning to think about other power plants that we have. What's the transition that we want to help those communities with now, even if they may not close for another 7-8 years? Begin those discussions, because these transitions take a long time. We made a commitment to the Navajo Nation overall to make this transition work. And so I think there's opportunities to do it no matter if you're an investor-owned utility, public power utility, or a co-op utility.
In the case of SRP, they provided information to the community about timelines. They announced that they were going to actually offer jobs to all of the employees. And that was a huge thing. I can't even believe they did that. If I were not offered another job within SRP, I don't know what I would have done.
Providing this level of support, providing these resources will help to contribute to a vibrant economy here in Arizona. And that is so important for our business success. So we've got every confidence that this will be beneficial, not just for our customers and our employees, but also for our shareholders.
We have reclaimed mine areas. You got Navajo Mine and McKinley Mine near Gallup. Then you got Kayenta and Black Mesa Mine, 3 areas that we can build off to build solar fields. And then we got power lines coming through our homeland. We can light up the city of Phoenix, Tucson.
The negotiations between the utilities and the Navajo Nation has left the Navajo Nation with a certain amount of assets from the Navajo generating station. The Navajo Nation was able to get the water pumps at the generating station. The Navajo Nation was able to get 500 megawatts of transmission lines committed to them from the Bureau of Reclamations. So those are really significant.
The biggest question was, if we have transmission lines and power generating facilities on the Navajo Nation, why are there still Navajo people out there without electricity? A lot of the times people already live where they live. They live in their ancestral areas. They've grown up there for generations, and that's where they want to be. Every community has a group of people who don't have electricity, they don't have water. It's really expensive to run power lines, and so renewable energy really offers those local solutions.
NTUA made a decision a number of years ago to start to develop renewable energy within the reservation, recognizing the abundance of renewable energy available here. We hired approximately 250 local Navajo and trained them. Many of them have gone on to work at other plants and continue to build. Now that they're built, they're providing energy for the local area, reasonably priced and reliable. In addition to that, we sell renewable energy credits to others outside of the Navajo Nation, and the revenue from that goes directly back to construct lines to those folks that currently don't have electric power within the nation.
The COVID-19 death toll continues to rise in the U.S. Fear is mounting the spread of the virus could devastate tribal communities.
I think one of the reasons why we were so impacted on the Navajo Nation with COVID is the fact that you have a lot of people not having access to things as simple as information. A lot of the information was spread through the internet. And when you don't have electricity, you don't have computers, you don't have TV, you don't have satellite, now you're kind of limited to if you get radio signal, if you get cell service. It also limits the storage of their food. This requires them, if they don't have electricity, to go and get ice. If their stores were closed, they were going further out and further out. And so they would have to go to the border towns when our stores weren't open. A lot of our relatives have respiratory issues and they have challenges with the air quality. That being compounded by a virus that attacks that exact thing really affected people that were already in a disadvantaged position. And so owning that process going forward in energy development for us is what we feel is needed in order for us to make sure we don't go down those same paths again. Out of college, I returned back home and I really was looking to create jobs and solve issues for my people. We looked at how we could form a company that would develop projects that we feel are in tune with the cultural and the local values. And we feel like we brought some of those values from Silicon Valley with fundraising and capital investment and markets into the nation, so that we can utilize those resources and those allies to be able to develop our projects.
That one we got. Check down. So reverse your polarity on your leads there and then remeasure. And guess what's going to happen to my charge controller? Right, you see that negative on there?
We're here in Hard Rock, Arizona, doing our very first solar training, and it's a 6 to 8 week program. We have about 10 Native students who are participating. And this is really a huge effort for us to invest in the Native community and be able to employ our own people to provide off-grid power for families that need it. One of the goals of the workforce training program that we have here is to prepare and empower local Native people to go into the solar workforce. That doesn't necessarily have to be here on the reservation, and they don't necessarily have to be installers, but we do want to give them the tools to succeed out in the renewable energy world. A lot of the applicants knew or have relatives and family that don't have electricity, so they want to be able to install their own system and know how to maintain it.
This is an immense opportunity for us to think about what traditional Indigenous governance works, and it should be established between Indian tribes and not dependent on the federal government. Then we will be able to demonstrate to tribes across the country how they can work collectively to achieve our goals as people who are Indigenous to the United States, but not dependent on it to prosper.
There's no model or template for how to do this. We are making this up as we go. But we do believe that it is our social responsibility to ensure that we help these legacy coal communities whose contributions were critical to the success that we experience today, and really for the economy that our nation is built on. This is because of people who have done hard work in coal mines and coal plants. And we owe them a debt of gratitude, ensuring that we don't leave them behind as we make this transition that we have to make. We cannot leave them behind.
Historically, energy has been one of the unfortunate drivers of inequality. Energy is deeply wrapped up in how we distribute wealth in the world. It takes money from all of us to pay for our fuels and our electricity, and it sends it off into the hands of a much smaller array of people and institutions and organizations. We could do a better job of designing that so that the energy system actually works the other way. It becomes a generator of economic security that helps alleviate poverty. It becomes a generator of income.
If we get this transition in Northern Arizona right, we can take all the lessons from that and apply them to many other transitions that we'll be facing in the years to come. Like the electric vehicle transformation, we're going to need a transition plan and transition assistance for that to take care of the jobs and the communities that are dependent on the old internal combustion engine that is going to be going away shortly. And the transition that coal communities are facing today are going to be faced by natural gas communities. We're going to start seeing communities suffering from the loss of natural gas fracking, natural gas processing activities, and the power plants that are run on natural gas.
biggest question is, do we have the political will to come together and govern ourselves? That is where we have our biggest problem. If we fail to do so, I think we as a country certainly won't be a global leader anymore. And globally, if we as a species fail to face these things, I think we do face some dire consequences. What that means for us long-term, it's hard to say. But, the world will go on. It existed before we were here as a species, and it will exist regardless of where we go. We may leave it damaged behind us, but it will survive us.
How do we ensure that these things exist for our kids into the future? To me, it's that simple. I want to make sure that I have said what I need to say and have done what I needed to do. And that way, at least the future generations will never say to me, why didn't you speak up for me? And, I'll never be to blame. There's nothing that beats a clean conscience, I don't think.
That made me think a lot about our local coal plant right down the road. At some point, that also will be shut down. Where will we be? So we're going to take a few minutes here and share our thoughts on the documentary, on what we're talking about today. If anyone has any questions, you can ask Isa. I think Rob's gonna come around with the microphone. If anybody would like to share their thoughts with us.
My name is Kathy Hedge, and I remember when I was 12, for the first time, my family was going from the Midwest out back home to California, and we went through the Navajo Nation. And I just kept, we all just kept looking and saying, how can we have so many people in such deep poverty? And looking at the pictures, I'm glad that there, something is happening here, but it still looks the same. And I'm 72 years old. That was 60 years ago. And the nation they don't have what they should have had all along. So I'm glad that this was very interesting, and I appreciate you bringing it to us.
I'm Pat Embers, and what reminded me when they were shutting down their coal plants is that years ago, and I don't know if it was 50 or so years ago, but that's when the Peabody Coal Company was coming onto the reservation there. And I remember reading about that, and it was one of my first awareness times of what was happening with the energy system and how they were taking over. And at that time, it seemed like the coal companies were taking over the reservation and so forth. Well, when I see this film, that's been their livelihood. Now it's disappearing, and some of them sounded like they were really wanting, a better system, but it's really interesting to see after many, many years how the coal company has affected and still remains to be really a source of controversy.
This continues to be controversial even in our own community. My local homeowners association had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and one of the hot button issues was the installation of solar power panels on people's homes. And did we have the right to do that, or did the homeowner covenants prohibit us? And there actually was a move to have one person remove the panels that he had put on. Yeah. So I can happily report that a new board was elected, and including the president, who lives down the street from me and is very avid about putting solar panels on his home. And so we're going to be changing the covenant so that it will be feasible. But it's very frustrating to have people complain about the aesthetics instead of be thinking about the power savings and what this will mean for us as a larger community.
I'm Judy Nicholson. Maybe this was just done by the filmmakers, but I found it very interesting that there didn't seem to be a lot of anger about how how the Navajo Nation had been treated by the power company. I mean, it was like they basically have just stripped all of their natural resources and have not really paid them for it. How is that possible? And why are they not more angry about that?
I forget exactly what our FREAK acronym stands for, but it's basically Flint Hills Energy. We put solar panels on people's houses. You just, you get a discount and then we do the work. And so we've been in a battle with Evergy from the very beginning, where they don't want people doing that. And they want to, charge you or block it. So we're all involved with energy access. Thank you for the wonderful film today.
Back to the film, it looks like they're making attempts to manage the energy transition very well, but that land needs water if people are going to continue to live there. And I didn't hear them talking as much about the water resources, and those are complicated issues about who has access, who has rights to Colorado River water. Maybe they can thrash this out legally in a way that would get water to those areas, but I'm skeptical. Maybe a positive notion, though, or example is that Kansas and Colorado have long fought, and I think that it may even include Nebraska, and relative peace has prevailed, but at what cost, I don't know.
Isabel Call here. I noticed the executive from the power company, her words, we can't leave them behind. I was really, I don't know if you all noticed that or felt feelings. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And also, who's the we and the them? And I thought the message of it really underscoring the importance of participatory decision making. Yeah, the people who are affected being the ones who are making the decision, being the us. That I hadn't seen the film before now, but we chose it for today as an inspiration for us and how we make decisions for us. And my hope is that our practice in our own communities, is a part of a whole world that does that.
Yeah, Judy, I find your comment about, why isn't there more anger really interesting? And I'm by no means an expert in this area, but having had an employee who's part of the Navajo Nation, I found myself many times in like weird communication gaps. And I've, read several books on the Navajo Nation. And it is interesting in that it is a part of their culture to, and this happens in many Indigenous and especially multi-generational, they actually just have a level of patience that that our culture doesn't appreciate. And that's such an important part of why they're always looking for buy-in. And I think to me, I'm always thinking about this idea of what does it mean to us and our political system and our culture where we're kind of waiting for outrage to make decisions on things, right? And we kind of allow that, and I do this myself, right? We allow that as a way to kind of escape accountability. Well, nobody complained to me about it, right? And I know this is an excuse I've made. Why didn't you just tell me, right? Instead of really saying, well, yeah, they're not upset about it, but what did we do to really ask how they felt, right? And I think about, I have no real answers, but I think about that a lot in terms of when you're really trying to help or support a community that's so culturally different from your own background, where does that burden really lie and who is it on, right? I'm also, one of the thoughts in my head, and I don't really know how to connect it to everything else is, so yesterday I borrowed the Beeman's van, thank you very much. And one of the great delights of borrowing their van, and I don't listen to NPR a lot, but I always do when I borrow the Beeman's van, because that's what's on. Sorry, I'm calling you, sorry if I'm calling you out, Dick and Sylvia, right? And so I was really enjoying listening to NPR, and there was an interesting discussion by the author of the book, The Enigma of Thomas, yes, thank you. The words were escaping me. And really at the heart of that was this idea of, and they were talking for a long time about money being a form of speech, right? And there's all these things you can say about that. And I was just thinking about this, right? Of energy also being a form of economic justice, right? And this idea of money being a form of your voice and of, democratic justice, and just how embedded so many of these things are within different systems. And so you always have to be very thoughtful about how are you hearing people's voices and really working towards greater, economic justice, because that's also important for people's voices to be heard. Anyway, just some thoughts.
Kathy, they're on Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to comment or has some questions?
I did ask if anybody had any to put them on Zoom, and I haven't seen any of that. And I haven't seen a hand up either, but if anybody wants to put their, oh, there's Mark. I think I can unmute him.
Well, I'm unmuted, I think,
Okay.
but I don't see anything here. But anyway, as a lot of you know, I'm in solar, and so I've got a lot to say. But the fundamental thing would be a message I would have for the indigenous peoples is watching this story. I see that it's all the same players. The people who are managing this change with the Navajo are the coal companies and electric companies. It's the same group of people who've kind of been taking advantage from day one. They, I mean, one line in there was that there was, we've got to take care of all these people and our investors. So the investors are the kind of this silent party that is going to, I think, take advantage of this whole opportunity. And I think that all the Native Americans populations should just kind of, well, I tell you what I like is the microgrid approach, which is bringing electricity to small groups of people. So, for example, the big, huge arrays that we were seeing on this are just useless to a small community. 150 megawatts of solar spread out over 20 acres doesn't do anything for the guy next door. So I think that the Native American populations should do more than just, take control. They should basically run the whole program and just do it at their own pace. Teach their people, their own people, get them, so make engineers out of them. That's what they need. Anyway, thank you.
This Thursday at 9 o'clock from our parking lot here, we're going to be leaving. The Climate and Energy Project is sponsoring a tour of construction of wind here in Kansas. So if you'd like to join me, it's going to be an all-day trip. They're going to have a bus, but I'm also going to be driving. So if anybody wants to come and learn more about wind and wind installations here, that would be a good time to do that.
Well, great. That sounds really good, Dan. Thanks for that. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We'll be back here. Do you have an announcement that you'd like to make? I think Judy wants to talk to us for a second.
This is regarding signing up for our annual meeting. If there is anybody here on site that has not signed up, because everybody needs to sign up, you need to do it online. I have my computer and I will be in the ALSOP room after the service, and I can help you do that.
And people on Zoom can send me their, if they haven't signed up and they don't know how, let me know. So, okay, I expect everybody back in here for our annual meeting. We're going to take about a 20-minute break, get some coffee, get some treats out there, and we'll meet you back here.